Hi, everyone. I hope that you're keeping safe and I hope that you're keeping your family safe. So, in this video, I want to talk about how we can use property as a vehicle for wealth creation. And I have a special guest with me, Chisha, who is really knowledgeable and an expert in this area. I'm really excited to have her. But before I introduce her to you, I want to first introduce myself. My name is Natasha Chumia. I am the founder of Diaspora Connect, where our sole objective is to help you buy property in a safe and reliable way. And on this channel, I like to give you information and inspiration on the Zambian property market. So let's get into this first video. I should first start off by saying this is going to be a two-part series where we're first going to talk about how we can use property as a vehicle for wealth creation. And then in the next video, we're going to be talking about how we can be money smart and financially sound in this time of Corona. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then please go ahead and do so because you don't want to miss this two-part series. So like I said, I have a guest on the show, Chisha. And Chisha and I have been friends for quite a number of years now, so I'm really excited to have her on this video. She's a fellow of the Association of Certified and Chartered Accountants and a fellow of the Zambian Institute of Certified Accountants. So that means, guys, that she's a very experienced accountant. And she also has a certificate in wealth and investment management. So these are the types of friends I like to have, experts in wealth creation. She's the director of personal success planning, which gives us tools on financial management. And she has co-authored a book called The Insider Secrets of the Wealthy Black Woman. So I'm going to put her full bio because I've really cut it down. I've really summarized it, but her full bio will be in the description box below. And there'll also be a link to her book. So if you're interested, please go on over and download it because I've read the book, guys. It has a lot of great tips. But for now, let's get into it. Hi, Chisha.
Hi, Natasha. So happy to be invited to your channel. And I must say, you're just saying we've been friends for a long time, but you've also appeared in our workshops. You're the legal expert we call upon on anything property in Zambia, especially. So we've worked well together in the past, and I'm quite happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for those kind words. So start by tell us a bit about your story. Where have you come from and what's the path that you took to get where you are today?
Okay, so like you did in the introduction, I'm an accountant by profession, and I laugh at accountants now because we're very good with other people's money. And that really is where I started from. Give me other people's money problems, especially, company problems. I was quite happy. I've always been happy dealing with numbers. But the challenge, I think, came especially when around the time when people are asking me, what do I do? I've retired. What do I do with this money? And I realized, my goodness, there's a whole other world out there about personal finance, which I didn't really know much about. Numbers for business, I knew, and health, hence starting on that certificate that I did, because I don't know, with us professionals, until you have a piece of paper, you don't feel, really experienced to talk about such things. So that's the journey that I took. And in doing that, I realized my own personal finances were in a bit of a mess. Nothing was working, and it was okay because I was working in a job. And every month my salary would come. But once I left the corporate world, that's when I really realized I had to get my stuff together. And that's really how I found myself in this world of personal finance.
So what is it that led you to write the book with Caroline Marsh?
Yes. So Caroline and I have been working together for close to 3-4 years when we decided to write this book. And I think it was really spending time and talking to people in our workshops, doing one-on-one mentoring, that we found that, most of the people we dealt with were people who were Black like us, and women, though we had men obviously in the workshops as well. But with women, there was always a particular problem, something around your beliefs, the cultural expectations, and all the same excuses we kept hearing time and time again. So we thought, you know what, I think it's time we wrote a book to address all those issues. We're Black women ourselves. We're out there making money and making things work. So let's share our own experiences and, touch upon those things that women always second guess themselves, especially Black women. And really, that's how the book came about. And it was a year in the making, I must say.
Yeah. You guys did a great job. And what you're saying is so key. I think that was one of the things that struck me when I read the book, is that there were many parts of the cultural aspects that prevent us from creating wealth that, I identified with personally as well.
Okay, that's which one resonated for you mostly?
I think it was the excuses that we give ourselves, to say,
Mm.
no, I'm just working for my kids' school fees, things like that.
Yeah.
And we don't allow ourselves to have bigger aspirations.
I like that you use that word allow ourselves, and that's half of the secret, really. It's just, it starts in the mind. Allow it, believe it, and then the rest is easy.
Yes. So we are going to get more into that in the next video. But for today, I really want us to talk about the property aspect of wealth creation, because I think that that's one of your cornerstones as well in terms of PSP. So why do you see property as a cornerstone of wealth creation?
Okay, so property is an asset class, if I could say, because there are four asset classes that you could build your wealth in. And you find most of the wealthy people throughout the world will always have property, whether they are in tech, whether they're doing the stock market or whatever. There's always the bedrock of property underneath it. And I think we speak from a point of experience, self-experience as well. For me, I grew up with a father who really believed in investing in property, and any business he had, the first thing he would get, or the second or third thing, would be a property under that business, which was a great thing because whenever a business collapsed, at least it had the property. You know what I mean? And then Caroline as well has built her empire, if I could put it that way, on property. I personally have dealt with property in and out because, having grown around a father who was in property. My husband is an architect, so I've really been surrounded by the whole property thing. So property is key because it has two critical components. There's the capital appreciation aspect to it, and then also the cash flow. And I think that's something people forget about the cash flow, and how big of a cash flow you should have will determine the strategy that you have around your property. So that's why property is such a good asset to be invested in. So I think that for me is what I would say is the key thing.
I love it. I love it. And, we're all about selling property to the diaspora in a safe way.
Exactly.
So I love that you put it that way. So just take us through now, because you do touch on it in the book, but take us through the different ways that we can invest in property in a way that is giving us that income and creating wealth.
Okay. So with property, there are so many different ways that you can invest. For maybe to begin with, there's the residential and there's the commercial. I speak very strongly around the residential because that's the area that I'm very, very much invested in. But I think one has to also look at how much money they have to invest and what benefits they want to get. Because when you invest in commercial property, there are different aspects, tax implications, and all of that. And when you invest in residential, and sometimes I think it's easier for a householder, you live in a house, you know the pressures that are around having a home, to be able to invest in residential. So I'll just talk generally about basically 5 areas that you can consider or that we touch on in the book of how you can actually invest in property. So the very first one is buy to let, which is a simple one. You buy a property and you rent it out. You can rent it out to a single person or a single family, but you buy it and you rent it out. So that's the buy to let. The second one is what I would call HMOs, or houses of multiple occupation. So this works really by using, let's just say you buy a 3-bed house, which would have bought to rent out to, say, a single family, but you rent it out to a number of people. So you obviously have to modify the property. In the UK, it's typically called an HMO. Here in Zambia, I have found that the HMO in the British sense, the way Caroline has done it in the UK, hasn't quite worked well here. What works well here is student housing, if I could put it that way, because that works on bed space. And the amounts that you charge per bed space is reasonable enough for a student to rent out. And then you have the sufficient numbers to give you a good cash flow. So it's really interesting. When I first started working with Caroline, it was I'd thought around, maybe I should do young professionals or things like that. But whenever I crunched the numbers, it just didn't stack up because there were sufficient little cottages in the residential areas or people already sharing houses. So I keep, going back to that market, checking what sort of rentals people are paying and see. One day it will work, but just now it's not quite the model
No,
that I
no.
would use here. Yeah.
I just want to take you back. In fact, I almost interrupted you when you mentioned when you talked about your father and his businesses and buying property, and then your husband being an architect as well. Because I
Mhm.
know that you are very successful in the student accommodation space. So maybe you can also just briefly speak to that about what makes
Mm.
that a good opportunity from your experience.
Yeah. So for student housing, the critical thing is being able to convert a property sufficiently to be able to accommodate the right number of students. So I had initially bought a property, which because I was under pressure from a mortgage, I was forced to rethink the model. And that's really how I entered the student housing market. From a three-bed house housing a single family, a family with two kids, I converted it and I was able to take on 24 students. So it's really being able to, yes, you look shocked.
That's
24,
amazing.
24
From one
students,
family to
yeah.
24 students.
Yeah. In fact, maybe I tell a small lie. It was one house, one family with a small cottage that had a bachelor behind. So the two properties combined were able to accommodate 24 students. And the key here is having the architect on board because, without a professional, you would just say, okay, we can fit 3 beds here or 4 beds there or whatever. But he knocked that house about in order to raise it from, if you just had to use it as it was, would have maybe gotten in maybe 15. But with moving a wall here, reducing, increasing things here and there, we were able to get in 24 students and quite comfortably. So the key thing is really working with a professional who will help you be able to get the house in the right state. That for me, I
Sorry,
think was the
I
key thing.
yes, I love what you're saying, Chisha. I had to jump in because that is
Sure.
always my cry. I
Yeah,
always tell people use professionals. It's so
exactly.
important to the success of your project, of your real estate
Yeah,
project.
yeah. And that is so key,
Okay,
Natasha. Yeah, that is so key, whether it's in the legal side or the just the property side, just to get a professional and give a cold eye over it. They'll tell you right away whether it can work or not. So for me, that really was the key to success. Obviously, location, location, location. I'm sure everyone in property understands that you also have to be in the right place. There's no point having a
that's
wonderful
right.
student housing facility in Kablonga and the universities are at Unza or Apex out. Get your house close to the place that you need it to be.
Fantastic. Okay, so that we've talked about buy to let, we've talked about student accommodation. Take us through the other vehicles as well, the other options.
Yeah. So the other option is where you buy a property in distress. And, I had great fun around this. And again, it was really following the lead on my dad. He would always throw in bids for banks that were selling, houses in distress. He would apply for it and say, okay, you apply, I'll apply, and let the secretary apply as well. So we'll put in three different bids. And usually you wouldn't get anything because they were so ridiculous, but it got us into the practice of always, being bold enough to go in and bid for something. And once or twice we actually did get a property. And, it's in distress, so the price is fairly low. And then you're able to buy it fairly low, put in a certain amount. Obviously, you have to crunch your numbers so that you're able to sell it back on the market at a good price. House flipping, I must say, you have to know your numbers. You have to know the market. Otherwise, you can end up with a house on your lap for a year to 2 years before you finally manage to sell it. Then the last one, I would say, the last two. One is land, buying land, but as a strategy, land banking, I think, is a professional term for it, where you buy land strategically, you hold on to it, and then you're able to sell it on. And the last one is not actually acquiring property per se, but property sourcing, almost like a real estate agent. That's another way into the property market.
Mm. No, thanks for giving us that run through, Chisha. And I think that aside from using professionals, I think the other important thing that you brought up is we need to be able to crunch the numbers. We can't just say, oh, no, I'm not a numbers person, I'm not an accountant. So I like that you brought that up as well.
Yeah. And in fact, when you read the book, Caroline shares her story. She was appalling at maths at school and was told by her maths teacher that she'd never, make anything out of her life. But look at her now. And the biggest thing was learning, getting beyond the fear of numbers. So anyone can do numbers. For me, I think that's just an excuse as well.
Yeah, and we have so many, so many mental blocks.
True.
Okay, so what are the challenges and barriers of really getting into the property market and really investing in property? What do you see from your side as being the main barriers and challenges?
I think the main barriers, and I'll start from a almost a controversial point of view, is your mindset. If you believe, no, it's for the apamwambas, then you'll never ever, no matter how good the opportunities are, you'll never ever get into the game. The important thing is to have the right mindset, to always believe that something will come good, and then also having the right attitude. Because property, I'm sure as you've experienced, Natasha, it's almost like a marathon. It's not a short-term game at all. You have to be able to look at what's pertaining, understand what's going on, and then enter the market and do, work with whichever vehicle works for you. So mindset, attitude, and knowledge. Property, I think, is something that you really have to have your finger on the pulse, especially in the area that you're working in, if it's commercial or residential, in whichever area you're working in. Make sure you know how much a house is going for. What is the market like? Are people buying? Is it a buyer's? Is it a seller's market? It's really understanding, taking time to understand what's going on in the market. That is, for me, the first thing that is the biggest barrier for most people. They'll say, oh, no, I can't do it because I don't have enough money. Before we even get to the money, money is an issue for, it will come because you'll say, but I need so much money to begin. But I think the easiest way in is through the property sourcing. If you are determined to, build up a real estate portfolio, but you do not have the money, the best way in is to start by property sourcing, because when you're sourcing properties, you're out there looking for properties, talking to people, understanding what's going on, and you begin to see the opportunities when they come up.
I love that. That is fantastic. I was when I was preparing for our discussion and I was going back to the book, there was a quote that don't be surprised if you see me tweeting this quote, but it was something to the effect that wealth creation is as a result of mindset and habits. And there was a third thing I've even forgotten now, but I copied and pasted it because I thought it was so key, because I found it so interesting, because you didn't say that wealth creation is as a result of having money. It's as a result of other things. It's about mindset. It's about how we think and our expectations.
Exactly. And like you said, it's
Yeah.
about the habits as well. It's being consistent. I mean, you've been doing property for a while yourself. And I mean, can you speak into how you have to almost like pace yourself and turn up every day, if it's reading the papers, if it's talking to your estate agents? What does it take?
It takes a lot of patience. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
I
does.
only really got into property investing in my late 30s and early 40s. And
Yeah.
I had been in property for in other from other perspectives, being a property
Mm,
lawyer, being on the lands tribunal. But in order to start investing, it took me a good long while to
yeah.
understand what I was doing.
Exactly. And it's that thing of understanding. I think it's so important to also look at which strategy am I going to use and then understand the way it will work and then go full out on it, because there's no like I've started, then no, I'm going to stop. You have to almost like burn the boats as you take the island. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Trisha. We have run out of time for this video. I could sit and talk to you about this all
I know we
day.
love this. We could just go on and on. We'll have to do another one on property with, talking around the legal things, because that's one big thing people just do not get either. The key things that they have to understand around that.
Yes, there's so many. That's a whole other series.
Video, yeah.
Okay, so I think for me, my biggest takeaway from this discussion has been the attitude and the mindset that one has to have in order to get into property. So I would love to hear from all of you guys who are watching. What is your biggest takeaway from this video? Leave a comment in the comment section below. I read all of them. I respond to all of them. And like I said, I would really like to hear your input. Now, before we go, Chisha, I have a few fun questions for you, my Z questions. So tell me your favorite place in Lusaka. What's your favorite spot in Lusaka?
Wow. I'll tell you my favorite spot, and it's really odd. Do you know the traffic lights on Church Road just by the cathedral?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love that spot because I don't know, maybe it's going to work for so many years, but I know always either September, October, the whole boulevard from the traffic lights right down to where you can see Comesa House is it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. People rarely look up, but it's fringed in
Nice.
purple flowers and it's such a
That's
beautiful sight.
lovely. I really wasn't expecting that. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, just
Okay, and
looking
tell
up.
me,
Yes.
I will definitely keep an eye out now that you've mentioned it. Tell me your favorite Zambian meal.
Ooh. I love lumanda. Fisashi and Ishima. Yeah, Ishima, millet, Ishima, and lumanda. My background, I'm from the north of Zambia and we don't do lumanda, but I had an Eastern maid who cooks it amazingly. So that's my favorite.
Nice. And what's your favorite Zambian name?
What's my favorite Zambian name? It must be, and it's a Lozi one and it's gone just now. I think it's a very beautiful name. What is it? What is it? I think, yes, Inonge. I think it's just so beautiful.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, Trisha, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to see you in the next video. And for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and share it with somebody else in your community, wherever you are. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss the next video, and hit the notification button because I know some people have told me that they don't know when the new video drops. So if you want to know, then hit that notification button. And also connect with me on social media. We are on Buying Property in Zambia on all platforms, and I love to chat with you there. So otherwise, stay safe and stay positive. Bye for now.
Bye.